The owner has just touched down in a private helicopter at this desert airfield, and she's really looking forward to her drive into town. Well, you would if you had one of these, wouldn't you? Welcome back to the channel and this showcase series where I take a deep dive into one of the cars from my garages. This one was a viewer request from Seb, so thank you Seb, I hope you enjoy. So what is this wild looking car? In game it's the Deveste 8. In real life it's called the Devel 16. This car was developed in the United Arab Emirates but with help from around the world, and we'll look at some of that in a little bit. They wanted to develop a real hypercar, a car to outdo all other hypercars, and they started out with some pretty high power outputs, but then they said no, we're going to do the 5,000 horsepower version, and in fact that's what this one is based on, the 5,000 HP. Manufacturers of limited run cars may well go to Chevrolet or Mercedes to buy their engines, but obviously with 5,000 horsepower being the requirement, that's not going to work. So they went to Steve Morris engines and had developed there an absolute monster, a V16 quad turbo 12.3 litre engine. For strength, a lot of it is made from single billet or one piece parts, and the engine is putting out 3,000 horsepower if you just run it at a low pressure and on pump fuel, 91, 92 octane they're talking about. If you take it on a track and you put in race fuel and you twist the turbo up to the maximum, it's then 5,000 horsepower. The raw and faintly ridiculous numbers are 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds and a top speed of 347 miles per hour. When you hear an engine note like that wailing away, you think of race cars, and would you believe that of course this is the road car? And they said later we intend to develop a race car. I mean, can you believe it? It's just going to be mad. Now all that said, nobody's actually bought one of these cars yet. The only ones we've seen are the ones that have been shown at motor shows, for example in Dubai in 2017 and a few other places. And people keep saying it's dead. There never will be a Devel 16 to actually buy. However, fairly recently they showed one again. They had some video of it driving normal speeds on a normal road. That got into the press. I'll link that below. So they're obviously trying to keep the interest going. They are saying that one day this car will actually appear. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Well, whether it does or it doesn't, we do have it in the game. So let's talk now about the Deveste 8. What's it like to drive? Well, of course it looks bonkers mad, and I will admit that when I first bought this in the game I didn't know there was a real car that it was even based on. It just looked so crazy. So you're immediately onto a winner. Just looking at the car as you drive it makes you happy. Those ridiculous exhausts and of course the engine note. Really can't ignore the engine note. The other thing you're soon aware of is that this car is quick. It has got very good straight line speed, it's got good acceleration. And specifically, and perhaps in reference to the car it's based on, it has a really good top speed. In fact, in the supercars class, it's this and the 811, which is the Porsche 918. They are the top two fastest cars in the class. That's in a straight line. It's not on a lap. And if you look at Bruffy's tables, you'll find the Deveste 8 is about 10th place in the supers class for a lap, because I say the cornering does let it down a little, and we'll look at the track performance later on. I should also point out that cars like the Pariah or the Italia RSX, although they're in the sports class, do have a higher top speed than this supercar, but still it is quick. To take this a bit further, I think it's time to look at some track performance. For fast street driving, or indeed for this track drive, I did struggle to start with. I actually did 2 lots of 7 laps till I got a full handle on the car. The main reason I struggled was it's not that keen to turn into a corner unless you get the speed right down a little bit slower than you might expect. And then it's fine in the corners, and in fact it rides the bumps very well as you can see me going over a pavement there. So no problems with actually driving it, but you do, as I say, have to brake earlier than expected, lose a bit more speed than expected, and that obviously impacts the lap time. My best lap was 54.743. That puts it a couple of seconds or so behind the Emerson Krieger, for my testing, and that's similar to Bruff's testing as well. So that is the time lost per minute, really, just by having to brake a lot earlier than you'd expect for the corners. Now, while it may not be competitive in this sort of racing, it is competitive in some stunt races and things. We do have races in the game with some very long straights, and here, of course, in the Supers class, this will be one of the best cars you could possibly have for doing those sort of races. Customization on this car is fairly simple. The secondary bridge on the front bumper just helps make it a little bit more like the real thing, and the same with the secondary trim on the back window, although there is no back window on the real one. Xenon lights, of course, you always want to have those. The plus 9000 livery, this is the correct one for the 5000 HP. Unfortunately, in the rest of the film, I'm using a previous livery I had on the car, so apologies, but I say this is the one that you want. For paint, it's a nice white metallic and a classic black on the secondary, interior colour being really up to you. Lower the suspension, of course, there's only 2 settings. It's street wheels. The Wild Wagon are a really close match, and I think dark ivory works best for the colour. Put some white writing on the tyres, as we can't have the pattern that the real car had, and of course black out the glass. Well, with business concluded, it's time for her to head back to the airport, grab the helicopter and off to the yacht, leaving us, of course, to rate the car. The car in game is in no way a copy of the real car. The real car doesn't have any mirrors on it, for example. It doesn't have a back window. This has both, and there's 1 or 2 vents missing and stuff. It's not as good, and also for this 5000 HP you can't put dark blue paint where you would like to have dark blue paint. All that said, it's still very recognisable as a Devel 16, and that's got to give it 5 stars. Driving, I'm going to go 4 stars. I think it's great fun to drive, and in fact the fact you have to brake a little bit before the corners and actually think about what you're doing, I find actually adds to it. However, despite all the fun and the speed, it's not competitive, so we can't go all the way to 5 stars. Value for money really depends on what you want out of the car. If you want the top supercar in the game, then of course this is not it. But if actually you just want a car that is going to be great fun, sound great, look great, be lovely in your collection and be fun to drive, this is $1.8 million. That's a lot better than some of them, so I'm actually going to give it 5 stars. So 5 for looks, 4 for driving and 5 for value. This is a very high scoring car. Not sure you can buy one, but luckily she seems to have had the prototype, so that's okay. Anyway, back to the yacht for a drink in the hot tub. People say that money doesn't make you happy. Well, take a look and make your own decision on that one. Anyway, if there's a car you'd like me to feature in this series, then please do let me know and I'll do my very best to feature it. I hope you found this informative, useful, or at the very least enjoyable. And thank you so much for watching.